We are just looking for a little, there it is. Good morning again here on Wednesday, April 9th, 2025 here in House Transportation. We're going to pick up where we left off and talking about purchase and use tax and sales tax and back to Professor Russo.
All right, so we'll go on to
Identify yourself and go on forward from there.
record Matt Russo, Deputy Commissioner, DMV. We left off at lemon refunds, so these are lemon laws. You go to the arbitration board, they rule whether or not it's an actual lemon, and then they issue a statement to the DMV. And it depends on the case. There are times when the tax was paid out of state. They come to Vermont, just realize it's a lemon, they just purchased it out of state, and they've already paid the tax. It'll say in the ruling that all the taxes due to the customer by the state that it was paid to. So we have had a couple instances where I don't think that they understood that and they were expecting that we were going to pay all this money back to them. We talked about tax receipts as an example, Home Depot. This was brought up, I think, previously during Logan's testimony, VA assistance. That is for disabled veterans. It doesn't happen often, but there are veterans that need assistance. There is a form that they complete, and that is when the VA has actually purchased the vehicle for them. If that's the case, they also get their registration free yearly. And again, I can run the numbers. I don't believe there's many. Three. Tax on a lease. So obviously you can't pay, well, you can. Closed end ended, you're paying on the full amount. The majority of them are for 3 years. So we're taking the agreed upon value of the vehicle, and then we're subtracting the residual value of the vehicle at the end of the lease. And that's what you're paying tax on. If you extend it a little bit more, we do have a form that they can complete, which is sent in to us, we'll say for an additional year or 3 months or whatever it is, and they pay tax on the amount of the use of the vehicle for that period of time. One step further is
And so that's done right up front. I lease a car for 3 years, I get all the paperwork, go in for the registration, or the dealer probably does it. They do the purchase and use tax, but they'll say, here's what the value is, and they'll say, when you turn it in after 3 years, here's what the value will be, and I pay the difference.
correct. So that we're not taxing you on the residual value, that you're not going to be using it if you're purchasing it. And our dealer unit is set up to educate all dealers with that information, so they know exactly what the calculation is. Taxing on a lease that was paid out of state. So you've purchased a vehicle out of state, you're a Mass resident, we'll say. You have all of your payments rolled into your monthly payment, and that includes tax. We now have to go in and figure out 6%, figure out how many payments you've already made on that, to subtract how much tax you've already paid, and then charge them the tax on the rest. And there's various situations with leasing out of state. That's just one example. So, private sale and dealer appraisal, we did discuss that. What we haven't discussed is taxing on a vehicle that's 20 years or older. It's not the same as a clean trade valuation. We use the low retail because you're not able to go by VIN numbers for vehicles that are 20 years or older. We have to look them up specifically to get the low retail value. Max tax. So through legislation, there is a maximum amount of tax that you're going to pay if you have a truck registered for 10,099 pounds or over 10,099 pounds. Off-highway tractors are included, and trailers of any weight are included in that. So you have and it sounds a little ridiculous, you have a small trailer, you're probably not going to be able to fit that much on there, 10,099 pounds. And so you're really not going to be maxed out because the price of that trailer is not going to be a lot. It's for bigger contractors, bigger trailers in general. So we're on to the exemptions that we discussed earlier. In the packet, you have the certification of tax exemption.
I'm sorry, maximum tax on all the
So it's just for trucks that are registered at 10,099 pounds and more. Or off-highway tractors and all trailers of any weight. That doesn't include pleasure vehicles and motorcycles and cars.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
So there was I forget the basis of the max tax. And what the purpose of legislation was for that reason. Probably, if I had to guess, more to do with farming and agriculture. But it's not specific to that, the way it's read. And so it's available to any truck that's registered for 10,099 pounds or more.
If I have a truck that's more, or whatever it is. If I buy a $250,000 truck and it's pays 6%, or buy a $500,000 truck at 6%, that would be 30 something thousand, but I max out at 2486. So no matter how big the
Yeah.
things are, but also no matter how the prices continue to go up and inflation continues up, when we set a dollar figure fee or a dollar figure cap, it does not adjust at any point. It will stay down there, the saving. In effect, the savings are dramatically increasing in inflationary periods because there's no adjustment to the max. And so that vehicle that when it was set in place 10 years ago, that cost 100,000 might be 250 or 300,000. The savings available to them is dramatically increased by the fact that there's no factor or change or review of this.
Couple points on that note. Correct, you are correct. This was just with the recent fee changes, this was adjusted.
Okay.
But again, you'd have to legislate that every couple of years for inflation. Because it's set at a number. There's no percentage to wiggle back and forth.
As
If you were to go to a dealer and register it for 10,099 or more, regardless of how much it costs, you're gonna get that deduction in the amount of tax that you're paying. And then the following year, you can bring that weight back down so that you're not paying that registration fee. So there's a loophole in there.
Well, one could argue too that they pay a lot more fees, right, for trucks on the road.
Yes, it depends on, so you're paying.
We cash them in another bucket.
Exactly. Your registration fee increases the higher the weight.
Yeah, okay.
For the roads.
Representative White and then Representative.
What's an example of a truck that, like, what's the smallest truck that falls into the 1,099 category? Just like a F-150 or bigger than
If
that?
you were to register it for that, yeah, you could include that. Your everyday truck.
So are we incentivizing people to buy big trucks?
I don't think that we're incentivizing to buy big trucks. I think what it's doing is giving you a number to register it at to save on tax.
So from a personal,
When did she said, I'm not sure.
I mean, that if I buy a smaller truck, I'm not gonna have that max. If it's like 9,000,
You could register it at 10,099 if you wanted to.
okay.
I got some personal experience to share that might help you help.
I'm trying to get my head around this.
Well, I'm just waiting to see if when you're say thank you or you're all set, then I'll move on. And if not, it's still your floor.
I think I'm all set. I'm just, again, I'm trying to figure out, why this law exists.
Right, that's what I was, yeah,
Seems like it does reward people who have big trucks or register them at that.
and I believe that it had something to do with agricultural purposes or farming. To save on those hauls that they're going back and forth with.
Right, but it's not limited
It's
to
not
agriculture. But we could put language in there too, limited to agriculture.
Exactly.
It seems like maybe a lost opportunity to, because it's a lot less money than I think other cars would, like, what is a kind of median cost for registering a car?
Regular.
Yeah.
$90. It's 91 for a registration for 1 year.
Oh, okay. Right, I was thinking about purchase and use. So,
Oh,
sorry,
purchase and use,
yeah,
okay.
Wait a second. They got that. Representative Keiser's up next.
first off, if you're in the business, you buy a truck that fits your needs. Okay, and so there are, and you have to be careful because if you register a vehicle for less than what you're carrying, you're opening yourself up to DOT violations and to other law enforcement. So that's the point. The other thing is that when you buy a truck, you have a certain, excuse me. Oh, that's right. So as I understand it, so what I have seen done in the past is that you might get a truck that can carry 31,000 pounds, but you would register it for 30,099. Only 1 pound less, so you can pay less in registration fees, but you can still, and you can carry. So anyway, that's just a side.
Representative Wells?
He answered half my question. I got an F-150, weighs 5,500 pounds, so to bring it to that weight is high, but Chris kind of answered that. Either you're pulling something behind it to magnify your weight, or you want to haul something heavier. So, yeah, he kind of answered. Thank you, Chris.
Representative Powell?
This is a loophole. Because I could buy an F-150 truck and register it at that. And that truck costs 75,000. I'm gonna pay half or, 2/3 of what it's due. Looks like it's just over $41,000. If your truck costs more than that and you're registered like that, you're paying less.
Exactly.
But okay.
Yeah, I'm just sort of
I'm
saying,
agreeing.
so that's.
I'm not
that's
sure
the
I
number.
understood exactly what.
Yeah, that's the
idea
number.
was.
It's
So what-
interesting that, I'm not disputing whether it's good or
I'm
bad,
just
but it
trying to
is a
understand.
little loophole, maybe.
Yes.
Cause if I register my F-250 and I say it's 11,000. Nobody's checking that.
As long as it's registered for that weight.
What comes into play at the higher, your class, you're now in a different class truck? What comes into play that didn't come into play as your, I guess, pleasure truck or?
You're just paying a higher registration fee depending on the weight class.
Are you
So the
subject to
only,
any other regulations?
not until you get to 26,001 and you're doing business across state lines.
So do people do this on a regular basis?
You mean the max tax cap?
Yes. So if people are buying a $70,000 or some number I guess that's what you're picking on, that F-350 because it's easy to, whatever it weighs, I have no idea. I guess I'm not into cars at all, but I guess I shouldn't say that as a transportation, but it doesn't, not something I spend much time on in terms of unless we're doing this. So will you buy a more expensive pickup truck? They're not paying the full 6% purchase and use tax. Very commonly every day.
If
Tax
it's
out is
registered at that weight, then it's common for them to register at that weight. To be capped on tax.
I don't know. I never bought a vehicle like that, so I don't know. What representative Casey?
Right. I got a 1-ton dump and that's registered for more weight, so I don't get in trouble when I'm hauling my little mini.
Right.
But I don't remember I don't remember if they, it was a long time ago I bought it. It was in 2016. I don't know if that law existed then. Seems like to me, like I remember it seems like I paid. I don't remember what the tax was. I don't remember anybody saying, hey, if you register it over this weight.
Right.
They just told me, what are you hauling? And I told them I was hauling, and of course, a dump truck, you can put some sand or something in the back. Sand's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of,
Depends on what you're paying.
I relied on him to tell me what I should register it at.
Right.
And I've been pulled over by DOT and I didn't get a ticket, so I guess I was all right. Yeah. I don't remember anything different about the fee or anybody explaining it, but I'll remember that next time.
Absolutely. Just
Representative.
I'm just wondering if the DMV records, how many fall under this,
Mhm.
but then how many passenger
How many regular passenger trucks fall under this category or have been registered under this?
Yeah,
I guess,
that'd be interesting.
Mhm.
It looks like you're at F-250, you're gonna be around 6,000 pounds. 65.
For weight,
Curb weight.
6,000 pounds, wow, that's it.
Yeah, but it's 150.
he's looking around.
Yeah, like 1 ton dump
That's
is
72.
it's like
Yeah,
9,000 pounds.
so It's under 10, let's say that.
And I'm just trying to make sure I understand it. There is a provision in the law. If you have a truck and you're going to register it at over 10,099 pounds, no matter what you pay for it, your your purchase and use tax caps out at 2486.
So if you say, hey, you owe $3,000 in tax. Oh, but you've registered it at over 10,099, we're gonna cap it at 2486. You're not gonna pay
And
that.
the registration fee on a 10,099 or more truck is a couple $100 more
I
than
think
that.
it's like 130.
Should still make that. Yeah.
And this is a common practice every day with large pickup trucks.
If I can get numbers for you, but yes,
And it's been on the books for,
all time.
and it's just sort of the standard practice, but it's not available to pleasure cars.
Correct.
So if you buy $100,000 car, you are paying $6,000 in sales tax,
Correct.
purchase and use tax.
Yes.
But if I buy a 20, if there were such a thing, I don't even know. If I look at, what do you say, boats and whatnot, those hugely expensive boats, they're paying us 6% sales tax with no.
You're paying the full amount
Okay.
Yep.
But a truck specifically
specifically.
has an advantage, so. Pickup trucks are one of the most popular, we heard that testimony earlier in this committee, that pickup trucks is the like fourth or fifth most popular vehicle in Vermont. I'm not aware of it, I just not, and since I don't buy vehicles very
A
often,
new
I don't
250,
understand it.
new 250 Lariat, you can buy one now. 88,000.
And
It's
in
a
most,
fancy one, but you know,
right, sure, but so the idea of a $90,000 pickup is out there.
Yep.
That 6% is whatever it is, $5,000 plus, but they're not paying 5,000 if they choose to register it. And I assume dealers must be there to help educate them to do this. I saw a phone a friend hand up over here.
I don't know if it's phone to friend. I actually have a question as I'm learning some of these more details. So would a large SUV, so like your Suburbans, they can tow above, is it just classified trucks or is it?
Just classified trucks. So if you don't have a bed in the back, then
okay.
it's considered pleasure.
And this is a common knowledge practice across the month.
Yes.
I don't drive pickups, so I don't. Oh, interesting. Well, that's not appropriate, sorry. It's interesting. So it's very common practice. This has been on the books, you said, since
You don't know how long, but it's always been.
part of the way to work. Okay, well, we go to school for a reason and we learn something. That doesn't mean we will or won't do anything about it. But we certainly learned something that at least some of us didn't know prior to today.
Yeah, happy to look into anything if you have any questions.
And requests amongst any members for additional information, whether you make it now or shortly after, certainly feel free.
Yeah, absolutely.
To, if you want to bring that back to committee. Sorry to hold up the show.
That's fine. Yeah.
Right. No,
So I included the certificate of tax exemption. It kind of narrows down what our current exemptions are available. So you can kind of see them all concisely on one page. If it was a gift and a giftable relationship is required, it used to be pretty narrow, small list of people. It was increased to include siblings. I think was one that was missing previously. And I think it's all on this page here. Here. Ex-spouses, daughter, daughter-in-law, son-in-law, son. Aunts and uncles, I think, are the only ones that are missing. So you've gifted your vehicle to your son or daughter, and they go to register that vehicle. We're just gonna ask for proof that they had it registered, and we will not charge tax on that registration.
How do you prove the relationship?
Good question. As long as you've attested to it and signed off on it, it's considered a gift. It's considered a relationship.
Yeah, it's nice that you can That's people's word.
And we've already covered the out-of-state registrations, bill of sale. Obviously, if you've paid tax somewhere else that hasn't been remitted to Vermont and you're showing proof of that, we won't tax you again. A letter from the motor vehicle department out in that state. And then again, it lists the states that do not charge tax. And if you purchased it in that state and you're moving to Vermont, we will charge you tax. And that would be on the value of the vehicle when you move to Vermont. The other category is a permanent disability. If you've had a vehicle adapted to meet your needs, we would need something on a letterhead from the dealer explaining that that vehicle was adapted for that purpose. Your doctor would sign off on it, and then you would be exempt from paying tax. And again, that's very few. If you have paid tax on a vehicle for your business and paid tax on your vehicle personally, and you want to sell that vehicle to your business or gift that vehicle to your business, I should say, as long as you own 80% of that business, we won't charge tax. It doesn't work the other way though. If you have a business that's paid tax on it and it's own personal, you're paying the full tax on that. Boats, ATVs, and snowmobiles.
Yeah.
I think we kind of covered a little bit, but there's a little more. So I included that shaded document that I was talking about previously, that shows you all the states that do title boats. So does a boat require a title? Depends on what state it's coming from. If somebody is moving from Maine to Vermont and they had a boat registered in Maine, we're only going to require the proof of registration if they're switching their registration to Vermont. We're not going to require a title from a non-titling state.
But we issue a title.
But for boats, we
Yeah.
will issue a title no matter what.
Okay.
Not the case for ATVs and snowmobiles though. Boats are kind of in their own category. I will pass around what our boat decals look like, as well as our snowmobile.
Nice.
So the small little sticker on top is the vessel validation that we were talking about. You are visiting Vermont, or you live in Canada, or you live in New Jersey, and you're coming to Vermont for your summer house. You keep your boat here for longer than 60 days. You can show us proof that you have it registered in your state, and we'll give you a vessel validation. And the cost of that is the price of the registration of a regular boat. The other longer decals, one for each side of your boat, that's for registration. And that's just for state police or Coast Guard to be able to tell from a distance what color it is and if it matches the year that we're on. And that goes by expiration date. I think we're on blue for 25 or 26 right now. And if we have 4 colors that we rotate out.
And the registration cost for boats depends on the length.
Correct.
Categories.
Yep.
Like 45-foot sailboat, how much would that be?
Ooh, I'd have to look.
Once you get over 26 feet, you're gonna get nailed.
There's no cap on that. There's no max.
Oh, there isn't?
No, just joking.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
No, yes.
send them back.
All right, so boats and vessel validations. The other yellow sticker is for snowmobiles. Boats and snowmobiles, the registration number that's issued for those stays with the snowmobile and the boat. So you have that number that you're painting on the side of the boat, or you're using letters that stick. That number is going to stay with the boat when you sell it. So the new owner is going to register it. And we have a spot right on the application that says what the previous registration number was. So it's all tracked. Same for snowmobiles. It's a sticker, a decal that goes on and that stays on there. ATVs do come with a plate and that does not follow the new owner.
These numbers on the side of the boat, they're randomly assigned, or they all mean something by classification, weight, length, or anything?
All random numbers, just like the plates, just a whole series. And
Other than the VT in the beginning, other than that, huh?
Yep.
Okay.
Vessel validation we covered. Who can acquire a vessel validation? And I think I mentioned it, but you can have Coast Guard documentation if you don't have a registration. It's considered the same.
Hey.
Looking for someone?
Come on in. That's someone who's not here and hasn't been all morning.
Other limitations, I think that it just, it covers the 60-day rule. So if you're gonna be in Vermont for longer than 60 days, we're gonna require that you have a validation. ATVs and snowmobiles. So we have a state reciprocity with a valid registration, which means that if you're coming out of state, we're just gonna make sure that your snowmobile or ATV is currently registered in another state, so you'd have to carry your registration with you and insurance.
So you showed us this shaded thing for boat registrations. Does every state require probably not Hawaii, but
Snowmobiles.
snowmobiles? They're not required in every state.
Correct. Yeah, we have the same thing for, and it's just kind of a guide for back in the day. Now our system automatically picks that information up, but we used to use those for registering, and you can quickly check to see if you're going to require a title or not. But not every state titles for snowmobiles and ATVs.
And if I come out of state with my snowmobile, I just need a VAS sticker. It may not be registered anywhere.
Correct. You would need to have it registered, a valid registration, in order to get your VAS sticker. Yeah, so you'd show a proof of registration and then you would be issued your permit or your sticker.
If your state doesn't have it, you register it here.
All states register them.
Oh, okay, that was my first.
Sorry,
question.
yes.
Yeah.
They don't all title them, but they all register.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
All states register snowmobiles?
I'd have to look as far as, like we said, Hawaii or, I'm not sure. If you were coming out of state, obviously, we're not going to require proof of your registration if it wasn't registered there. Those are the kind of things we have to look up in the NADA book or the JD Power book, which lists all states and provinces, and we can kind of verify if there's a registration or what they issue for a registration.
Did your son register his snowmobile down in Louisiana? It had snow this year.
Swamp boat, but he did have snow. They definitely did have snow, yes.
It's to be amphibious.
They had quite a snowstorm. Big time.
I'm from Louisiana. She moved from Baltimore back to Louisiana just in time for the snowstorm.
It was quite something.
Yeah.
Operating on private land, the only requirement in statute is just that you carry something, a written document from the landowner. Obviously, if you're a landowner, you don't need a document, but if you're on a giant piece of property and you get stopped by agents, they just want to verify that you actually have permission to be on that property.
Is that in addition to requiring registration, you also need to have proof that,
Yeah, if it's not your property, you still have to have it registered. Just need to have something information. And we're not talking about small properties, obviously, it's just the larger ones. We're on to international registration plan, which is a different type of registration. Prior to 73, if you were a trucker and you're crossing state lines, you needed to acquire a registration for every state that you were traveling through. You can imagine going cross country, how difficult that would be. So a lot of work, which was brought up at an AMBA conference and started the ball rolling on coming up with something where you could apply for one registration that would include all the territories and states that you're going to be driving through. I say territories because Canada and the provinces are included in BC. So by 73, they came up with a plan based on the amount of miles that you're traveling through each state. So when you first register for an IRP account, you're paying the estimated amount of that you need traveling. And those are all calculated out for a first registration. When you renew, we're going by the miles that you actually traveled for the previous year. And it goes forward like that. So international registration plan is the idea of having one registration for all territories and jurisdictions. And again, like I said, how are IRP fees charged by the distance? Who should apply for IRP? It's for any truck with 3 axles or more, or a total combined weight of 26,001 pounds or more. traveling across at least 2 jurisdictions. So if your home base is Vermont, that's one jurisdiction. And you're traveling back and forth between Vermont and New York, you're gonna want to apply for an international registration plan. It's gonna cover the registration fees for using the roads.
Portion.
It's an apportioned bill. Yep. And I did include in your packet an example of a cab card. So it's not gonna look like your typical registration you have for your truck or car on the road. It's like this. And there's a website right on IRP where you can look, where agents can look and see what the cab card looks like, the specs for the cab card to make sure that it's what Vermont standards are. So that you can't just print this off of a Word document. And these are our new and updated ones. As you can see, it lists the amount of weight that's allowed in each state down below each jurisdiction. So for example, Arizona's limit is 80,000, which is the same as Vermont, and that's typical for most of the states, the load limit on roads. I kind of,
Is that a different view? Represent out?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so some have different weight limits. And then, when I see big tractor trailers, they have license plates from states, I thought.
yes,
So you might have a state, but you're actually registered in all the states.
correct. So you have to have a base jurisdiction. So if you were coming, you have a business in Vermont, you're gonna be trucking across state lines. You would satisfy the residency requirements to set up shop here in Vermont. And that means providing us with 3 pieces of documentation that you have a physical location. We're not gonna accept a cell phone bill, because a cell phone bill could be for anywhere, right? A landline bill, a utility bill, property tax documents, those are the things that we would want to show proof that you actually have a business here set up. And there are more specifications. But at the end of the day, it's really up to the jurisdiction to decide whether or not that is a real location. An example would be Irving. Established an IRP account a couple years ago. They hadn't had any documentation from that location yet, but we have the ability to go to that location, see that they have a sign that's Irving, walk inside, see they have a receptionist, they have a working business there, right? And it's for purposes like that. More recently, Jolly was acquired by Stewart's Shops. Same thing. Obviously, we're going to go to the shop that's going to say Jolly on it still. But we have documentation showing that they acquired them. It's been signed off. So really, it's for purposes like that. It gives us the ability to say, yeah, this is a physical location, rather than saying can't do anything until I get a phone bill, because these are businesses that need to continue running every day. Okay, on to crash reporting. There is another piece to this, which is if the International Fuel Tax Agreement. I'm saving that for the finance portion, because that's where a lot of our fuel tax revenue comes through. Crash reporting. I think I included a crash report in here. So it's up to you, if you're involved in a crash on the road, it's up to you to have a report sent to DMV within 72 hours. That's what that form would look like. The majority of the time, what we're really looking for is that you had insurance at the time of the crash. Because it's the one proof that we need to meet legislation. That is on page 3. And really a crash report is needed. I think it's for $3,000 worth of damage or more, or if there was an injury involved. So if there's a small fender bender, it's not worth $3,000 worth of damage. You may get a letter that says, hey, you didn't submit a crash report. What we're really looking for is the insurance information, so we can send it out to the insurance company. They can verify that you did in fact have insurance on that vehicle on that date. And if not, if we haven't received your crash report, you could be needing to carry SR 22 insurance, which is liability insurance on yourself, until we receive the crash report, or up to a year.
So you have a crash. My wife got hit from behind in Burlington. It was a snowy day. And she called me and I said, they got crashed. It wasn't, you know, it could be up to $3,000. And the police came, filled out this form. They're the ones who fill this out, right? The crash report.
They're not, you fill this out personally. I'm sure there are cases where they may do it for you, probably unusual. I think what happens a lot is that they're completing this crash report and you're thinking, well, it's a police report, they're gonna submit it. Two separate things. If we haven't heard from anybody else and we don't have a police report, we're gonna have no way of knowing there was a crash. So while we're asking for this to be done in hours and you don't do it, the only way we're gonna know is if we happen to receive a police report that lists you as a party to the accident or the crash.
So there was a police report. They hand wrote it out.
Yep.
So at some point, somebody's gonna come and say, where's your crash report?
Once we are notified by that police crash report, and if it meets the, if there wasn't 3,000 and there was no injury,
Yeah,
you're not gonna get a request to have that submitted because there's no need to. We do get a lot of calls. If you go to the Vermont State Police website, they do have a portal where you can order reports. The only one that you're not gonna get from the Vermont State Police is a police crash report. DMV is the record keepers for those reports. So if someone has inadvertently applied for a crash report from the Vermont State Police, they're gonna refund the money and send them a letter that says you're gonna need to reapply through DMV. But we house all the records for those. Restricted driver's license program. An RDL is a restricted driver's license. It allows somebody with an alcohol or drug conviction to continue driving on the road during their suspension period. It's not required, it can be optional, but it's only optional for a first offense. So first offense, alcohol or drug conviction is 90-day suspension. If you, for instance, have to get to work during those 90 days, you can apply for an RDL. You need to have the program documents signed and completed and notarized. It's $125 for an RDL. And then you can continue driving during your suspension period. But you are open to extensions, where if you serve your 90 days and then for reinstated, you're obviously not going to be subject to those extensions. By extension, I mean you blow into the device and it registers 0.02 or more. That's going to be a failure. And then you're going to get an extension for 3 failures. So you kind of open yourself up if there is a problem, if you do have a problem with drinking. I do have an example of the interlock device. I'm not sure.
Representative Wiley has a
Can
question.
you just clarify? So this is only something you can apply for after the 90-day suspension? Or
It's optional it's not required to have an RDL during your 90-day suspension. But in a circumstance where
So
you need to drive,
if somebody has a violation for drinking or drug use, that the penalty is a 90-day a 90-day pause on suspension of their license.
Correct.
And then the RDL is something that you can apply for after that, or?
you can apply for, as soon as you're convicted, you can apply for it.
Okay.
And part of this RDL, part of this includes this ignition interlock device. Is that thing that's, so you have to blow into it before you can turn the car on and
Yep.
that's all part of it.
Yes. I can show you an example of it.
No, couldn't your friend blowing it for you?
So, well, I'll show you. There's a camera.
You gotta pull that folder out for everybody. That was pretty comical.
Johnson.
Yeah, I didn't bring any alcohol. So.
There's some of the.
Let's be accurate.
Warehouses, right?
So this is an example of the camera, and this is just one company. This is Draeger. Smart Start. So just one company, an example of what the camera would look like in your vehicle. And the reason for the camera is it just makes a stronger case in court. If you're saying, oh, we saw that you blew, that's just in print in black and white. You have no way of knowing if it really was them. We have the camera, which then you can match it to and say, this is the exact time that you blew. This is a picture of you blowing into the device.
Unless you're a twin.
Yeah, I'm sure it's happened.
You've given us a lot of thought.
So the blow device looks something like this. Little mouthpieces that go on, and everyone's different. I mean, they look different, they act differently. Some you need to blow into it and then inhale the same way for the certain amount of time. Some of them you have to hum into. So they're all different. I don't know if I can leave this here if you guys want to check it out later.
Huh. Oh. Well, have you taught? He's like, well, check it out after.
So there are three situations when you're suspended for an alcohol or a drug or both. A 90-day suspension, like we discussed. A second offense is an 18-month suspension, and that is in conjunction with an 18-month requirement for the RDL. So you've got this, you're able to drive with the RDL in the vehicle during your suspension time. So they kind of run concurrently. Third is a life suspension. And it's not a true life suspension because we do have the TA program, which they may touch on with enforcement. A life suspension means that you're going to be driving with one of these in your vehicle for the rest of your life. And to get into the TA program and be approved, you have to have this for 3 years. So a life suspension can technically be overturned if you're enrolled in the TA program, but that's just a one-time chance. If you have any violations during that period, then you're suspended for life for good. Conditions of reinstatement, and that's for any offense. Completion of IDRP, Impaired Driver Rehab Program, which is an alcohol course. And during the period that you have this installed in your vehicle, you can hold off on completing that course. So we'll let you drive with the RDL in your vehicle, and it's not going to be removed until you have provided proof that you've completed that program. How often is an RDL renewed? So your first RDL goes for 2 years, and it begins from the point that you're getting it until your first birthday. So if my birthday is in 2 weeks, then I will get my first year for 2 weeks and then plus 1 year. So it's not a true 2-year license. You're kind of getting shorted because it goes from now until your birthday. And then after that, your RDL is renewed every year for $125. There are random tests in the middle of driving. So you're on the road, you get a beep on the machine that's telling you need to blow into the device. You get a certain amount of time to blow into the device before the vehicle shuts down and you're forced to go off the road. Not dangerously, I mean, it gives you time, but you're not able to accelerate. You're going to have to find a spot to pull over. And that violations are for anything that's registered at 0.02 or more. We have had failures due to mouthwash, small things like that. So you really have to be a lot more careful than just your everyday vehicle getting in. You just had mouthwash when you have an RDL and you have an interlock device. There are all the things that could set it off.
Better off having dog breath.
I will pass this around. I'm not sure if how many I printed off, but
So when you said 125, that's for the license. How much is that machine costing them?
the monthly cost is really, it's for calibration, so you're required to go in either once or twice monthly.
Yeah.
And I think it's, I don't know exactly, it depends on the company, $50, $30 for each calibration.
Okay.
And the reason for the calibration is that's when the report is sent to us. So we don't know that you violated, aside from not being able to start your vehicle and get to work. We're not sure if you violated until we get that report at the time of calibration. There's 2 pages to each of them. So
I just have a technical question.
Sure.
So if you blow into that thing and you've been drinking and it doesn't allow you to turn your car on, then how do you get to the DMV to get it calibrated
You wouldn't come to the DMV, you would go to,
or wherever?
you'd have to get it trailered. It's disabled and you're not able to start it again. And there are many reasons due to the person driving for that to happen.
Real deal, serious. Represent House?
So if you have a failure, you can't start the car again? Or can you wait a day and then do it again?
I forget how many tries you get before it disables the vehicle. It's not gonna do it just because you failed once or twice. The value is that it's not starting, you're not able to drive from at that time. But as far as locking it so that you can't move the vehicle, I'm not sure exactly, depends on the device and what violation it is.
We took a bunch of testimony on this a few years ago. I remember we went all through the whole program and whatnot, Commissioner Mahoney at the time, like 3 years ago, 2 years ago, or whatever. Anyway, deep into it. And
So
I've never seen this before.
for all devices, 1.5 liters of breath volume is required. Of course, there are situations where somebody has an illness, COPD, where they can't provide that amount of breath volume to start the vehicle. Obviously, we want them to be safe on the road for themselves and other drivers. So we do have a program set up where we can waive that amount of breath volume. It needs to be done by a pulmonologist, as you can see in that form I sent around. We just need the pulmonologist to verify that this person cannot blow 1.5 liters of breath volume. Here's what they can blow. And it needs to be within a certain range. Otherwise, you're not able to drive. It's just not safe.
How many Vermont drivers are are using this program if they want to try?
About 900 participants. The city of Vermont. Currently. Yeah.
I know a guy that's had a few TWIs, doesn't drink no more. He used to work for me. And I told him, I asked him, this was a pain in the ass going to get him to go to work. And but he's a great worker and stuff, but I'm glad I heard this. I was gonna mention to him, but he's had 4 DWIs. All when he was a young kid, like he was. I'm not saying I'm no stranger to him, or like driving here. But anyways, I could tell him to contact your department and see about getting one of them boxes, so he's working for another guy now.
Absolutely.
And I talked to him and he said, yeah, he's a pain in the ass going to pick him up there. It was on a back road, way out back.
Yep.
Mud season, it's great to go up there and.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, you can enroll in the program, get a device installed. And there are programs we have for low income too. I just wanted to mention while we're talking about it, where you can get a 50% discount on the fees.
What would that cost somebody to go through this whole deal? I mean, they already had they're obviously paying the society for the mistakes, but once they get past that, what's it cost to?
I think it's about $50 monthly, depending on which program you're using. The initial installation, I think, for the equipment and the leasing and everything is $250 to $300 or $200 to $300, depending on which company. And then after that, it's just a monthly fee.
That can go in every car.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
They're all specified depending on what vehicle you have, and they know exactly what they need to do to install it, depending on what vehicle you have, the wiring.
Just mentioning, I would just caution that if the person's license is flagged as needing an RDL, so.
I don't know if it's flagged or
Well,
not.
no,
Yeah.
It'd be a life.
yeah, so it would be flagged that on their license, if it's run by,
Okay.
so it needs to be operated in a vehicle that has it. So you can't, if you have a work truck, you get work, switch vehicles, that's where you have to
Yeah.
be careful.
Right, there are
Never be
limitations.
driving my work truck. He rides it. I'm thinking he gets his own rig and I don't have to go get him.
Yeah, there's limitations on commercial vehicles. And really, that's because of federal regulations. You're not able to put an RDL and an interlock device in a commercial vehicle
I know.
crossing state lines, doing
Can't imagine.
operating heavy equipment. All right, we're on to investigation referrals. An investigation referral comes to us from, could be anybody really, concerned citizens. That includes family. We get this a lot from kids or children of people that have dementia. My dad's still driving. We're really concerned. The doctor won't do anything. So they send us a letter or an email and say, this is my concern. This is what my parent's name is. And the reason we call it a referral is because there's probably more to it. There usually is. So we like to get the information, reach out, make contact, say, hey, what's the situation? Get on the phone with them. It's medical doctors, and that can include ophthalmologists as well. We'll reach out, say, hey, I have a patient. We're really concerned. At the very least, can you give them a road test to make sure that they're still safe to drive? Or sometimes they say they're not safe to drive. They've got glaucoma. It's horrible. They can't see. We don't want them on the road.
So a doctor, medical doctor, eye doctor can contact you individually, as an individual who just saw this patient and watched them drive and saying they shouldn't be driving. They can contact you and it's this referral.
We call it the investigation referral is internal. Really, they're giving us a heads up, and that can come in any form, fax, email, written letter, in person. And then what we do is that unit will get all the documentation together and present it to the chief, who will make that determination. There are cases where it's really bad and that they shouldn't be on the road, and that's the commissioner's discretion is to say, hey, before you go any further, we're going to have to issue an immediate suspension just for the safety of them and the public. I only have one copy of this. I'm not sure if I included it in everyone's. It's a copy of the investigation referral sheet that we use internally.
Okay.
And that's just what we check off. Police reports are very, very common. We've had cases where they've stopped a vehicle and slurred speech. We read the report. It says they didn't have a BAC. They had a DRE come to the scene. They didn't think they were on drugs. And so that's when they make a case to say, hey, I think this person might have medical issues or medication issues. Can you look into it further? So we request a medical report from the doctor based on that. Dementia, it's very common for us to request a written exam as well as a driving exam, because the things that they're forgetting or may not be aware of on the road could be street signs, directionals, those kind of things. So we start with a written and then move on to a road test. And then for psychiatric evaluations based on what we're reading in a written report from a police officer. Not as common, but common.
So just to understand the process, so, I go to the eye doctor says, they shouldn't be driving, clear. And then they call, let's say, and refer it to your office, to the DMV. How long does that process take? What are the steps that happen before then somebody needs to contact that person and say, either take their license away physically or say to them, what happens? Is their license physically taken away?
Not physically. It's pretty rare, but there are times where we get reports that they're pretty bad. And then we have an immediate suspension. And we can have one of our enforcement officers go out and hand deliver the letter to them to notify them so that they know right then and there that this is what's happening. It's usually like a 15-day window, but in those cases, we want it done right away.
Yeah, otherwise they might get a letter in the mail.
They would get a letter in the mail that would say in 15 days, you're going to be suspended. Yeah. So once we get that from a doctor or from like a concerned citizen, it's a pretty quick turnaround once they compile everything into an investigation referral packet and it's signed off by the chief. within a week or two. Everything's done.
And then there must be some process, hey, I disagree.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So anytime DMV takes an action, they have a right to a hearing. So there are cases where they say, I think I'm fine to drive. They submit a request for a hearing and we go through that process.
And then one last, so some of these must be after there's an accident. And the
Absolutely.
police officer says, oh, yeah, there's something.
Right. Well, during my investigation, this is what I found.
Yeah.
That's why it's good to have a good narrative. Even from a concerned citizen, it's good to have information because sometimes we'll get reports that just have a one-liner. You know, they look like they were swerving. Were they looking for their phone on the floor? I don't, it's not really a lot of information. I don't want to start sending out medical requests for everybody.
Dr. Beard.
No.
Any idea how many of such requests you might have a year or?
I would say I was in this position previously, so I would get maybe 5 to 7, up to 10 a week, maybe. And that's including ones that really have no basis. You when you really read into it and you have a concerned citizen, you find out later on it was their ex and they're mad.
Okay.
Could be.
The stories you must be able to tell.
Absolutely. 100%.
I mean, years ago, I had a piece of legislation passed, if you had a referral from a doctor, saying your ability to drive was hampered, you needed to be suspended. You only had to do the driving portion, not the written part.
Right.
You said you do the written. That's no longer required.
It depends. It depends on the situation. I think it comes up more often with dementia.
Oh, okay,
Um,
yeah,
because there are, especially in cases where where there are doctors like it's not a good situation. We know that they're not going to be able to pass the driving exam. I don't want to put somebody on the road. I don't want to put one of our examiners on the road and put their safety at risk.
Well, what I'm saying though is that we passed law saying that you just have to do the driving, so. I mean, I guess my question is more procedural, you just know that and do the written anyways?
I am not aware of that.
Yeah, it was probably like, I don't know, 10, 11 years ago.
Was it specific to?
Was specific to like a doctor, you go to the doctors and said, I don't think you'd be driving anymore. Cause I had a constituent that just couldn't pass he just couldn't pass, he was fine driving, but he couldn't pass the written test, so I was like, well, you really need to do the written test to drive.
Right. I'll look at
So I
that.
had that changed,
Mhm.
but I could look it up, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd be interested,
Actually, it was maybe 12 years ago. That was you just sparked my.
Right, no, I'm interested in that.
Did away with it.
Yeah.
In some circumstances, but yeah. So, just curious.
Other reports that we get, and this needs to be sent by a medical doctor, is driver rehabilitation. It's an extensive program. They go through cognitive tests. They have a simulation they do for driving before they even allow them to go on the road to make sure that they are safe. Those are very detailed reports, and that we put a lot of weight on those as far as suspending somebody's license or taking them off the road. And non-driver IDs we do offer for medical reasons. We do offer a free non-driver for anybody that has a medical issue that needs to downgrade from a regular license to a non-driver ID. This is what we were talking about: medical evaluations and driver eyesight evaluations. When are they required? At the request of the medical doctor, at the request of the ophthalmologist. They can specify in that report. We'd like to have checkups every 6 months, every 1 year, every 2 years, and we have a system that keeps track of all that. So every 6 months, it'll come up and it'll request a new medical from the driver. If you mark on your application, there's a medical question where you can mark yes or no to the question is, do you have any medical conditions that would affect your ability to drive? You mark yes, we send out a request for a medical or for an eye evaluation, depending on what it is. And like you asked, as a result of a crash or a traffic stop as well. That's all I have for today.
That was a pretty significant amount of different things you got into, Representative Wood.
So we've looked at a couple proposed bills that suggest in requiring an eye exam when a driver gets to a certain age, or requires another driver's test if they get to a certain age. When we hear about issues, older people driving into the side of a building or being involved in an accident. I mean, have you all looked at that in the past? Do you have thoughts?
I think it's come up in the past.
Yeah.
There's proposed legislation. I think it's very difficult to put an age on it. 70, I guess, to me, doesn't feel like a quote unquote old person, so to say new legislation means that you have to come in now at 70 to have an eye evaluation, I think that we probably get a lot of discrimination complaints.
Yeah.
So it's hard to put a number on.
Apparently Senator Clarkson has some legislation designating AV.
Represent that. Okay.
And I don't remember if we got this information. If we do have a bill about eyesight and vision.
Mhm.
Do you know how many states do require
I know.
some level of eye test?
I don't. That's a good question.
At certain ages?
I do know there are a few, but I'm not sure. I don't
I
have
have
the
that
source.
information from my constituent.
Other questions for our presenter, professor of pastry? Anybody else? Okay, we are, thank you very much. We appreciate all the time. This is definitely the DMV 101s that we're looking for. I know we're the same kind of thing tomorrow, in a whole number of areas. So
Great.
we'll see you again tomorrow morning. Is that the?
I think we have enforcement tomorrow. Yeah, everything enforcement. But any questions, feel free to reach out.
All right, and